Okay. Hello and welcome to Game 4 of the final of the COVID-19 Open. This is between Abyss and fwwwwwibib. So far, Abyss has won 2 games and 1 game has been drawn. So the score is 2.5 to 1/2. The first player to 3.5 wins. So if Abyss wins this game, he wins the tournament. If it's a draw or fwwwwwib wins, then they keep playing. I'm archvenison. I am joined today by Brandon Weaver. Commentating. And they should be starting anytime now. And I think that Abyss has white, although I'm not always good at figuring that out from the playtech interface.
It appears so. I've been given the go-ahead, Sid.
Yeah.
Yep, so we'll just have to see whenever they get that go live. Okay, looks like we're starting. Here we go.
Not a lot to say about the first move or the second move. Adjacent corner is the most common opening these days.
Yeah, and you have the white reach and then the mirror.
Yeah, and in all their games so far, they have played several parallel in the middle like this.
Yeah, I'm never sure what I think of this meta because I'm always tempted as black to try and break their kind of line there.
Yeah, so Abyss has gone out of line very quickly, which allows black what seems to be a pretty good capstone placement.
We wonder what this is going to do on that. I mean, it could be capstone E2 or something like that, but needs to reply to something.
And if the other last games were anything to go by, we will very quickly see Abyss use most of his time.
I mean, I don't know. He's stalled quite a bit on this one.
This is what I mean. He generally falls about 10 minutes behind fwwwwwib.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, though, these early moves are foundational towards the rest of his strategy. So if he gets this wrong, he spends the entire game trying to play catch up and trying to regain his momentum, especially after a strong capstone placement like that.
Yeah,
it's not surprising.
I'm not quite sure what his plan was with C2 because he now doesn't. He's gone from having the initiative being white to not really having any clear threats. So yeah, he's working on a horizontal threat. The issue with that is that black can just move his cap up to D3.
3 or C2.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is actually true. And black is always happy to kind of get a checkerboarding of pieces in the opening.
Yep, to an extent, it feels like he yielded a lot of control on this one, but we'll see how he plays this out.
From a point of view of tournament drama, it would be more interesting if fwwwwwib won this game, but I will endeavor to remain neutral.
Enough. I mean, to be fair, this early in the game it's kind of hard to tell which way it's going to go.
Yeah. I don't see anywhere obvious for white's cap to go. His best bet might be to try to get dominance on the 5 and 6 ranks. But Yeah.
Looks like black especially is just going to try and control ABC, which unfortunately for white's position right now means that cuts off one of their threats pretty solidly. But with that capstone there, it can also address the DEF line, and it looks like Abyss is going to try and play that.
Yeah. So essentially, I think what Abyss wants to force the capstone to capture either D3 or C2 rather than C3 coming down, because if C3 came down, then all of a sudden, then black would have serious threats in both directions. Whereas if the capstone captures, black's threats are mostly horizontal so far. It's also notable that white has a much stronger presence on the F side of the board, so that could make for some very serious vertical threats later on.
Simon is saying that capstone and B5 might make sense. I could potentially see it because black has a lot of strength right there, and you probably want to disrupt that as well as having some type of offensive strategy, but I'd also be kind of tempted for D5, but I'm not sure. Simon just said or D5.
Yeah. With the idea that either way you can capture on C5, so
a lot of it is that C4 is kind of their center of strength right now outside of the capstone, so disrupting that.
Also, if you play on D5, you have the option of making a hard cap if you want, which could be pretty good placed on D4. It's as always is unclear whether it is good enough to make up for the loss in flatstones.
Yep, that said, I'd probably want to see a few walls come out before I really want to try and put a hard cap on, just to give options. But who knows? We'll see how that plays.
Yeah. Also, what we haven't mentioned so far is that there's a Comey of 3. This means that if the game goes to flats, black has 3 added to their flat score. And this incentivizes, among other things, this incentivizes black to play walls. So white should be expecting to see a number of walls at some point. Okay, so pretty clearly going for the hard cap there. Unless black captures down, which would probably be silly.
The problem there is that relegates that capstone. If black cuts it off and puts a hard presence anywhere around C3 or even moves stuff over, it's basically nicks that entire area because that relies way too much on C2. And if black puts that capstone over, white has a problem, and then their capstone is stranded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of liked B2 to the right too on that. Simon was saying that in chat.
Mm-hmm. So do we see the hard cap now? The issue is that Fwib can get his capstone on C3 next turn. Or just play flats.
I mean, depriving D2 is a good option because if black gets that, then white's going to have a real headache because that leaves a lot of strength, especially because of C4 having 3 pieces of influence around it.
And also by building around on 1 and 2, Abyss is making the C3 square less important for his threat.
Well, the problem is he's going to have to get E and D1 somehow to really start reestablishing a threat because that capstone has way too much influence over the rest of his threats. And since he doesn't have anything vertical going on, that's going to be an issue too.
Well, he can quite quickly have something vertical on F and E.
Well, especially because black doesn't have much influence on those two.
Exactly, and black's quickest way of shutting that down is to move his cap over, but then black doesn't really want his cap over in the middle of some white stones.
Yep, I mean, I guess if I was Abyss, I'd kind of want to establish something horizontal as well. That way, Black moving that capstone over would be potentially damaging for him as well on the defensive side.
Yeah. I can imagine I was going to say C1 or B1 here because that starts building to a concrete threat.
Yeah, Simon was mentioning D1, which I could have seen as well, because you would have E1 to the E2 to the left, which would enable that.
The issue with B1 is that it relies heavily on the C3 left capture. So, and white can block that while making a hard cap, which he has to be thinking about given that cap placement. Yeah.
There's that. I guess a lot of the way I think about playing around a capstone is trying to get away from it as much as possible and try and make the opponent's capstone irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
We have row 4 potential.
Okay, so Fwib is making sure that white can't run away with anything on E and F.
As well.
And the idea is if you just get a couple flat stones in there, you can often temporarily capture to stop it, giving you enough time to place a wall, enough time and space to place a wall. So often with these all flat scenarios, just having one flat stone in there is enough.
Especially if it creates a choke point where they have to go through F to get road.
Yeah. So from Abyss, I wouldn't be surprised to see A2 or A3. I also wouldn't be surprised to see E1 try to move things away from Black's capstone, or we could see F4 trying to get threats in both directions.
A3 I kind of like for keeping that connection there because otherwise Black's going to place that fairly soon.
Yeah.
I see a case for building in on E1 or F4, any of those other locations as well.
Yeah. The thing about F4 and trying to make a threat in the other direction is it's a bit early to expect to get Tinue, so this is the kind of positional part of the game where you really want as many potential threats as possible. And that's what he did.
Uh-huh. I could see an F5 just to try and stymie some of that and give us more options.
Yeah. Wall and F, because Fwib can afford to play a couple of walls and still be ahead on flats.
Yeah.
So with that wall, it looks very difficult for white to get anything concrete over there.
Yep.
So he probably has to lead into his horizontal threat on the bottom of the board.
Simon was saying in chat that C6 could have pinned the cap a little bit. But I'd also agree on trying to take out that EF threat because that's too live right now to leave alone for too long.
Yeah. From Fwib, oh no, it's Abyss's turn again. Yeah, so A3 is still a good move. If he thinks that A3 and A2 are equal, then he could play E1.
I guess the only issue I have for Fwib in this position is that it's going to be hard to get attrition on the F line if he wants a horizontal threat.
Yeah. The other thing is that C1 would be quite a good square for black, so we could see white play there to block it. But yeah, I would expect white to be playing more offensively than that given his position.
going to have to start getting some horizontal threats to try and make that wall a little bit irrelevant, because right now it can basically eat the entire F column.
And noting the clock, Abyss is about 6 minutes behind, as expected.
He likes to think through these.
Well, exactly. He tends to spend a lot of time thinking about the early game, and then he plays on increment in the end game, which can make counting flat stones quite nerve-wracking. But so far he has been correct. So can't really complain when he's been doing so well.
I mean, in general, it works out well for him, and taking time isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just sometimes at the end of the game, if you end up in a particularly rough position, you don't really have much rope to kind of climb out of whatever hole it might be.
Well, and especially if you're down to a game where the flats matter, you don't really have time to count every turn, and so you just have to keep a running tally and update it based on each move and hope that you're accurate.
Yep. Simon is saying in chat A3 with idea to go east with cap.
Yeah. Well, and also that gives the cap can move it. The cap can go either direction then and complete it. And by having the option of moving east with the cap, that makes Black moving his cap down to D2 kind of impotent, because you have it removes the choke point at C2 D2. In this position, I think that I would prefer to be white, but it's by no means clear.
I mean, the entirety of Black's threat can be erased by White within about 1 or 2 turns, so Black is going to have to get some more options going pretty quickly, which might be something like D1 there. But White can also start making a strong horizontal threat and try and build around that wall, which means they have 2 viable options.
Yes. And also, a note, Black could move the cap to E3, which pretty effectively cuts off the threat, especially if he's able to get in E1 first, and that also starts to build, I guess, another vertical threat. He already has a vertical threat, so it's not so...
Looks like he went with the A3.
Yeah. I would not be surprised to see E1.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to want to cut that horizontal thread and make it harder for the build there, because if White gets E1, that's going to be a pain.
Exactly. Right, so if you... Well, you could... okay.
The wall's coming into play. That's a bit earlier than I expected.
Yeah, the problem with that is White can get the... If White plays E1 here...
Yep, Simon agrees with you.
His threat is still pretty far away from that wall. But I guess if he plays E1, the wall comes down to F3. No, then he would play D1 with tack. So if we have E1 and then Black plays D1, then White could capture. But none of the Oh, White could capture F2 left.
Yeah.
That would be the way to go.
If they end up with E1, then they're going to have dominance over that southeastern quadrant there.
Yeah.
With 6 pieces of influence to 2.
Yeah, I think E1 followed by F2 left is fairly dominant here. because the wall is too far away. If the cap comes down to d2, then he can just fill in with his flat on d3.
If Abyss manages to get both E1 and D1, that's probably gonna be game.
So if he plays E1, yeah, now what does will Fwib do? And also, Fwib has, is it 20 plus? Is it 15 plus 20? Yeah, so Fwib has been playing entirely on increment, which is, yeah.
See cases for C1 or D1. Sim is saying something about C6 for kicks just to scare him.
Well, that does make. No, it's not a. No, never mind.
To be fair, that's a very Simon move, which is give them something at left field to try and eat up a lot of their time.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want Abyss to have E1 and D1 if I were black. Because most of the rut of his entire road is in that quadrant.
And D1. C1.
That said, Simon has to be twitching here because there are no walls to throw his capstone at.
The issue is that B3 right. He's pretty good.
Yep, D1.
Okay, so D1. So will we see F2 left? I think that's a very strong move. On the other hand, if you have the upper hand, you're always skeptical of flat on flat captures, because it's pretty easy to imagine scenarios where the black capstone wanders over and picks up that and skims that off.
I guess the fun part would be D1 north. Because both of those roads would rely on that.
Yeah, that is a thing.
That's why I definitely wouldn't want him to take out all of the credible threats right there with one pill swoop like that if possible, without at least getting something else going.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that move. What about B3 right? Make it with tack, and so you're then forcing black to do a flat on flat capture. Might be the way to go.
Could be. I mean, there's a lot of strength there in the southwest quadrant for white, so he can respond to a lot of things.
On the other hand, you're always going to be a little reluctant to give up your hard cap, but
yeah. Then it'd probably start a fight over the entire ABC column.
Yeah, and it pretty much neutralizes the vertical threat from black. So the idea is that then,
so there you go.
Now if black captures on B3, he can just move the cap right back and skim it off. And if black, I guess, do we see D2 up? Because then you're protected by you're not really protected by the capstone because it's pinned. We could also see E2 left. That might be the way to go. Because then you're keeping the semblance of a vertical threat for black. Yeah, Simon suggested E2 left. And that's what we have. So now white has some serious disconnect.
That's what I was afraid of with that one. The problem is that black also doesn't exactly have an extreme connection either, because most of it's going to rely on that d4 square.
Yes. Well, he could. It's white's turn. So black wouldn't mind getting e2 in here. So yeah, white fills that in.
So now we have 6-3 there in that quadrant again. So white definitely has dominance over there.
And the thing about having that 3x2 block is that he can capture with any of those stones and not break the connectivity.
Yep, and it might force the capstone to get involved as well.
And it's important here that black's capstone is pinned. So, for example, if white captures on d2, the cap can't come down to rescue it. Now the stone on d1 could come up, so that's probably a bad move. But, well, not necessarily, because if we have e2 left, d1 up, and then c2 right, the cap still can't come down, and so now even if Abyss played a wall even if fwwwwwibib played a wall in that situation, he could throw in the opposite direction. So that capture war might be something to think about, but
yeah, Simon is mentioning to keep an eye on the time there, but I think Simon has the right of it when he says that Abyss always does this and still ends up pretty fine in the end.
Yeah. Well, it's essentially opposite time management. So Abyss uses all of his time in the opening and middle game, and then plays the end game on increment, whereas fwwwwwibib plays the opening on increment and then spends all of his time starting in the middle game and then into the end game.
I mean, the headache I've always had playing Abyss is that if I'm not paying attention in early game and I give him too many positions to play with, I'm in a lot of trouble really quick.
Yeah.
It looks like they're bringing the wall into play.
Okay. So essentially, what that means is that the cap isn't quite as pinned. Okay, filling in with flat stones. That allows for a capture on d1 with tack and without an obvious response. Well, I guess
I mean, you still have B.
What?
Still have B.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's actually an idea, because if you capture on B and then if you capture B4 down and then the cap goes over, then you can capture C2 left and the cap's no longer there to help.
So Simon is saying this looks really good for white right now to build a really strong foundation and try and keep black on the edge. In general, I'd agree it's probably going to be war over D1 and 2 somewhere along there.
And after, assuming if fwwwwwibib places, then after his move he will be...
It's a good point as well. The capstone's still pinned, as Simon said in the chat there.
But it's not pinned if white captures with E2.
Go after Juan right now. Play C1, right? Because you don't want a wall there on that one row if possible. Wouldn't make sense. Never mind, ignore me.
What's it called? Black could play C6 here. Because that means that if white makes a threat, black can capture D2 left. And then if white came down with the cap, it would be losing. Right? Essentially, that pins white's cap in a not entirely obvious way, but not also particularly sneaky. But that might be the best counterplay that black has. It would also be attack threat because of E4 left. And I'm not entirely sure if there are any good purely defensive moves for black, so that might be the way to go. And it also should be noted that the top of the board is very empty. So if black manages to neutralize white's current threat, then he might be able to get dominance up there.
We're seeing a couple mentions of A2 and A4. Trying to cut off that root over there because there's way too much strength there on that lower right quadrant.
Yeah. The more to look at it, the more I like C6 because it forces white to do something. And the fact that fwwwwwibib has thought for, I think, 4 or 5 minutes on this move means that he's obviously trying to calculate as deep as he can.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of position where white might be able to get a Tinue soon.
There's also mention of A4 giving a potential for horizontal threat in a few turns.
That is, yes, that's true.
Yep, and Simon kind of had what I was thinking on C6, which is a capture war on D2, D1 that's going to lead to a lot of interesting developments very quickly. Yeah, I just think white's too strong there to really try. Okay, looks like wall on A2 then.
Yeah, that pretty much cuts it off. Well, my... Yeah, okay, capturing on D2 would have been bad. Yeah, I was thinking about the capture on D1, but since the wall is still pinned, C3 right would have been dangerous. Okay, So when we talk about what Sime and Simon are saying, they are in the chat on Playtech, on the game for Playtech, on playtech.com.
Yeah. Yep, so now they're saying that C6 looks good over there in chat.
Because, I mean, a threat's always good.
And I think the chaos would benefit fwwwwwib a lot more.
Yeah, Simon is saying E5. I guess the idea is to try to make the horizontal threat more substantial. But the weak point is on 1 and 2, not 5 and 6. Okay, so yeah.
C6.
Got C6.
What do you think? D1 or 2? Ooh.
Okay, so Abyss had clearly thought about that.
Black, I'd be tempted to go at c3 or something. Let me think about that for a bit. Because you still have the entire potential for that, but you want to also deprive white of that c3.
Yeah. I think you have to go c3. The thing is, if you go c3, then white goes d6 with tack. And then do you move your cap? Oh, you can't move your cap because it's still pinned. Well, you could move the cap to c3. Wouldn't break the pin. You could also play b5 with tack.
Yeah. Simon just mentioned that over in chat.
Okay, yes. And just get some pieces on the board and c4 would still be open, c3 would still be open.
Simon agrees on b5 as well in chat.
So how would white block that? Okay, he played
c3.
c3. And with the Comey, black is winning by 2 on flats.
Yep, so there's the attack threat over there. I guess e4 is one option, but not sure. Because that would kind of expose that entire E area.
Okay. b4 down. Yeah, so could see the white capstone come back to c3. But then we'd probably just see a placement on c4. The important thing... Oh, actually, black's capstone is now pinned from a threat in the opposite direction.
The other interesting thing is if you had c4 going south, it would also be right next to b3, which has a one-piece liability, which means there are a lot of threat potentials over there as well.
Yeah.
5.
Okay. That's attack threat. We could see the wall come over to block that.
Immediate thought.
And we could also see a cap movement, which is... or a flat movement. That, I don't like that so much. Because...
is that 4 and 5 are about to become a horizontal threat pretty quickly. And I'd almost say b4 just because that would also cut off some of the momentum they have in B and C.
Exactly. It's almost like white and black have switched their threats.
Probably going to have some type of threat on f4 pretty soon as well.
Yeah.
f4, e4.
White doesn't have an immediate threat. We'll probably see, I think, f4, because then when white deals with that threat, you can get f5 and start cutting off white's threats over there and making a vertical threat yourself.
Looks like they're going to go after that white piece potentially there as well.
Yeah.
And I guess the only benefit for black is that c3 can start moving south and give them at least some leverage there, but that won't last for much more than 2 or 3 turns.
Well, the problem is, so if you were to make an immediate threat here with f4, then white captures down, and you repeat the threat with e4, and then white will throw and drop a stone on b2 and put the wall on b1. So white ran away and hid next to his own, black ran away and hid next to his own wall rather than giving up the captive to white.
Yeah.
But he also, in doing so, gave up his own threat.
And also gave up some momentum they built up there.
Okay, so now the horizontal connectivity on the 3 rank is basically dead because white can come down with his cap, and so black is trying to form the connectivity on the 1 rank instead. And it's also pretty far away from there. Okay, now
also unlock the cap a little bit.
Yeah, I can see white playing a wall on d1 because then he can free a captive in 2 directions.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure what black can do here. Well, maybe move c1 up, because then if the wall captures on c2, you could crush it with your capstone. And not give up immediate attack. Simmons says that Fwib is currently +3 with Comey. I will trust his counting skills. But yeah, so black is in a bit of a tough spot, but he hasn't given up his lead on flats. And also, we should note that white currently doesn't have any concrete threats for roads, but white has a bunch 4 captives underneath single flat stones, which is a very big resource, and that's the reason why white is still winning and is still ahead in this position. Also, Abyss is now under 1 minute.
See if he starts speeding up or not.
So Fwib said you have to choose which captive you want to free. Which means I assume that we get... Oh, okay. He's saying, well, if you wait, I'll wait. Notably, I think capturing d1 left is very good because it allows you to throw onto b1 and a1. Okay, so that is attack threat. And notably, no capture with the wall stops that. So we have to get, and the capture with this capstone also doesn't stop that. So the only option here for white is to capture with a flat stone, which is important because white currently does not have any black captives under flats, I don't think. Yeah. Now he does. The problem with playing out that capture war on e4 is that white can throw over his capstone, leaving 1 black behind and pick up, which would be totally worth it if he could pick up a powerful stack. Also, fwib is now down under 3 minutes, so it isn't, the clocks aren't entirely one-sided.
Yep. Abyss is still playing at about 35 seconds there, though, so if he doesn't start going under increment, he's going to have some fun pretty quick.
Yeah. But it's plus 20 seconds per move, which means that if he has planned ahead, he could wake up sometime. That is a classic strategy of just, when your opponent makes a capture, just fill in behind with a flat stone.
Then we had a B4 minus. That'll be fun. Well, there goes that wall right down B.
Yeah. But if you throw that wall down, so let's say white would, for purpose of argument, say black captures E3 up, and then white throws 2 B3 down 1-1. Black still has a road by place filling in, and if he only spreads down to B2, then white has a road by moving D2 over. On the other hand, there are easier ways of breaking up the threat on D4, E4, F4, so it's not a huge deal. So apparently they're having hard wall competitions. So fwib was worried about Abyss freeing those captives there.
And I would be too. Take a look at 5.
Okay, so finally, fwib decides to skim off C1. I mean, Abyss decides to skim off C1. I mean, we likely just see fwib fill in at C2 or not. Okay, trying to make a horizontal threat on the other side of the board. And it should be noted that they are still, fwib is still up +3 with Comey, so he just has to run out of, well, he's down on pieces, but Abyss has to be careful, because if Abyss plays all but one of his pieces, he gets in the interesting situation where he can't play his last piece, which is what happened to fwib last game, or happened to one of them in the previous game. Spent a long time with one reserve left, but they couldn't place it because they were losing on flats.
So it looks like we're going to have a 5-6 threat going here.
Yeah.
Should be noted that B3 is still vulnerable to cap throws, so if they get an AB threat going, potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, it's been long enough since that was relevant. That could possibly be a sneaky threat.
Is that trying for a vertical threat? The problem is that D5 would be needed.
Okay, so that stops it for now. Maybe we see A2. The other thing is that fwib can afford to play another wall, say on F6, and move that up to F5 to cut off the threat.
There's one threat.
Okay.
We could see cap north.
Yeah, because that would be a threat. So we do see that.
Yep, and it looks like Abyss is starting to regain some of his time, and Flip is starting to run the clock a bit.
Yeah, and now we... Okay. Yeah, he had that resource, so he has spent it. Now there's a weak point for black on A4.
I just had a really funny thought. A1, up 1-1-1, take the entire stack and just blow it right down south.
Oh, and there's nothing... Well...
Black doesn't have any immediate threats on it.
Yeah. That's an idea. Or he can just build.
Because it also gives option to hit D4 as well if black gets anything played in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard move to see, but it is it could totally be a thing. And that doesn't at all. Yeah, he could still play that move.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a good way to throw a lot of white pieces back into his pocket.
Yeah.
Because you have that wall and really hard wall right there.
7, 6. Okay. And he didn't do it. Okay.
Still an option. He could still do it.
Still an option.
Yep, I would hit that pretty quick. I'm still liking A4.
Yeah. Could also play.
Here's the funny part about that. Because of that move on B4, they can't put a wall anywhere on that. And it's starting the capture war with a lot of white pieces being frayed.
The other thing, an interesting. Okay, he makes the threat, so that's no longer an option. But capture, now it's technically an option. Okay, now I assume we get a thrown downstream.
I would. Get 3 free. Leave a lot of liabilities around, though.
Unless you just move 2 to D4. Okay, throw it downstream. That's a lot of captives, but they're pretty hard to pick up because they've got a wall and a cap next to it. Simon is saying spreading left would have been Tinue.
Well, knowing him, he could probably see that type of thing.
Well, we'll have to review that later. Okay, so that's a threat. That is not a threat, but the A1 up is still an option. I'm not... So, Simon is saying he thinks it was Tinue to spread the big stack left. I'm not sure if he could spread it far enough.
I'm going to have to look at that again later. I'm still really liking that A1 stack north. That'd be so beautiful. I'm slightly fixated. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah.
Time said it's not Tinue.
Okay. But there was the option... well, let's not dwell on previous moves. So if we do get the wall thrown north, Then... Okay,
Yes.
now we probably see Fwib clear out the two... Oh, no, that's a tack threat.
That's the other reason I like that. Because he can throw it south and get a bunch of pieces.
But he waited until it was with tack.
Yeah, that's also fair. It also builds a ton of credible vertical threats as well if he throws it south, leaving 1-1, 2.
Well, except he has his own wall in the way. So we see a block there. Yeah, I would go back. Not all the way. Okay.
Would have skipped 1 and then left 2 on 3 and 2 and then put the wall down there in the corner again. Just because that would establish a bit of vertical threat as well, but yeah.
I think he wanted to leave a stone on A4.
Fair. Fwib down 1 on flats.
Is that after Comey?
We'll ask. I figure they're doing the counting. I'm just watching the rest of the board. Okay,
Yeah.
he said yeah.
Yes.
Ooh. That's interesting.
Oh, so right back at you.
The problem is that's a pretty significant amount of black captives, yeah, for basically that.
Well, he essentially did exactly the same thing. It was the same strategy as the white throw.
Fwib up 2.
Now they're both below 2 minutes, equal on time.
Yep. So there's E2 and E3, which both have 2 captives each. And if white threw down either one of those, it would be interesting. I'd almost go down to E2 because the capstone can't hit that wall.
Yeah. An important note is that white only has 2 flats left.
I'm slightly tempted for E2, but let's see how this plays.
You could skim off of E5, which is with tack. He could also crush the wall. I don't think that's immediately losing.
Of course, the exact first thing Simmons says is smash the wall, smash the wall. I want to see the wall smashed.
He has to be thinking about it because he's only freeing 1. Yeah, he did it. Okay, because that's totally a good trade because he freed 1 captive and picked up 2, and he has a powerful capstone.
So to throw, not quite.
What are the flat counts, Simon? So what can he do with... He can't really do anything with that capstone, can he? He can't make it... Okay, he can get to there. Oh, and then he has 2 on C3.
Yeah, so it's not attack threat yet because you'd have to move the walls.
White cannot play a move. White can't play another stone until he's winning, or it's a draw.
It's also fair.
It's great. It's great when the player who's behind on flats is the one to run out. And the Comey encourages that because white is usually the one who runs out of flats first.
Yeah. And if black wants to taunt that stack up at A6, white can't touch the wall. Because if white does, it loses instantly. And that would wipe out 1.
Yeah.
+2 is coming.
1.
Ah, beat you.
So
Yeah, it's a problem with having a bunch of liabilities like that. See how those all play out. Now, I guess the fun thing is D3 is a huge liability now, so what are they going to do about it?
Exactly. That's why I probably would have hung on to the capstone. But
what do we get? F6.
So
what are they
now,
aiming at with F6?
I mean, Fwib just wants to play his flats, I think.
I mean, the problem is that D3 is wide open there. That's going to leave a lot of damage.
I mean, but Black could always recapture.
I mean, somewhat true, yeah.
Because it wouldn't be immediately losing, but he would be leaving two things behind this time. So, ooh.
You can't just leave that stack alone.
Yeah, so I assume he captures with one flat. Oh, this way, if we get the wall if the wall comes back, White can smash it, and he's not covering up his own flat stone. So many liabilities. And
Get nervous whenever that happens.
All Black wants to do is play flat stones. And Fwib is 25 seconds. Okay, but White can capture. Now what?
I mean, that wall stack could come down.
Yeah, because he would only have to leave one. Yeah, because he only has to leave one. That was the plan.
I think this is about to start becoming the Capture Olympics for a while and a bunch of flat shenanigans.
Okay.
I'd be real tempted to just put the capstone on top of there, honestly.
Yeah, especially because he captured with the flat, so you only have to leave one behind.
Uh-huh.
It's this interesting thing. You'll get an end game where you think the board is choked full and nothing can happen, and then all of a sudden there's a few captures and the game's wide open. Although I would be surprised to see a road.
I mean, I guess the interesting part is as soon as they start determining, fine, I'm going for flats because there's no road that's going to happen today.
Yeah. Okay, so that's coming very close to a threat for Black. Oh, for White. Huh. Yeah. Because how does Black block the vertical road? Because he can't really move his cap, otherwise he just gives the things back to White.
I mean, that's one way.
He's moving his wall over. Yeah, I did not see that, I have to admit. But we can see White place on... So if we see White place on C6, then Black moves his big stack over, and White can't immediately smash because it would be losing.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the entire E2 stack.
He moved in that direction, which is understandable because he wanted to capture the Black flat. But the problem is that now Black has the option of throwing his wall over to block the road threat, and whereas moving the wall to d2 instead would have blocked that. And he indeed throws it over, leaving behind a white. Fwib is now the one who is lower on time, but they are basically both playing on, they're both playing on increment, and so it's just a bit. Okay, now black could go back and leave, yeah. And now white could fill in with attack, and then black would probably just play a flat.
No, they can't. Look at their flats.
Oh, yeah!
Cheeky. Naughty, naughty. I mean, you could use a wall to try and pry it back.
That's actually true. Before, when I was talking about playing on c6, that wasn't an option either. Okay, that's a threat. And black is now down to 3 flats left, 3 reserves. White probably spreads d2 right to gain some flat count. He still wouldn't be winning on Comey, but he does do that move. He's got to pick up what he can.
The problem is that e2 ate most of his pieces,
yeah,
and then d3 has the rest of them.
And black's the only one with resources, because under his wall and his cap, the cap would only be in an emergency, but it takes 2 moves to pick up a pile. So if
Fwib's +1 on flats right now, so if Abyss plays 1 piece,
then it would. Is that after whose turn?
Well, considering Fwib's about to time out. Oh, never mind. There we go. That's dangerous. What are we thinking here?
Okay, but at this point, if I understand correctly, yeah, so that happens.
So here's the fun thing. They can't run away with c3, because what happens if he goes hard right onto d3 there? That's attack threats. I'd do that. 2, 1, time.
Oh God. And that's the tournament.
Looks like it.
That was a really intense game. And I think next time I do this, we might have to have a bit more time. Because in the high-level games this tournament, everybody struggled with time.
Yeah, but that seems to be the case.
Thank everybody for watching. With that game, Abyss wins the finals 3.5 to 1/2, and so he wins the COVID-19 Cup. Congratulations to Abyss.